this is Andrea French, Executive Director for TAG, Transportation Advocacy Group, welcoming you to another episode of Homeside Chats. Today, we are joined by Houston City Council member, Edward Pollard. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So really great opportunity to sit down and talk with you, not necessarily under these circumstances, but thank you for your time today, and really wanted to know what your experience has been like as a new council member, as we've had to navigate and face something that none of us has ever experienced before. So if you could share with your...
This has really been, trial by fire. In my 4th month on the job, once we got elected, we came into office and we had the Watson explosion, and then we had the water main leak. And then a few weeks later, we have coronavirus, and we've been dealing with this for the past couple months. And it's a virus that, if you would have asked me 3 months ago about the coronavirus, I wouldn't really know anything about it. And now our entire daily routine and everything we do is surrounded around this crisis. And so it's been a lot to handle, definitely overwhelming at times, but that's when leadership counts, and that's why I ran.
Very good. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about why you did run for council, and then we'll come back and talk about kind of some current issues. But you're able to put your vision to work usually pretty quickly, and this has put a little bit of it on pause. But can you share why you ran for office and kind of how you're experiencing carrying that vision out today?
Yeah. So in times like this right now is why I ran for office. It's to be on the front lines to help my community, to aid them and to represent them in challenging periods. And right now there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of people that are struggling, that need assistance, need resources, need help. And I've always been a person to have a passion for people and a passion for service. And I always want to be out front and at the table to really help and do what I can to uplift my community. And so as people are going through these troubling times, I'm blessed to be in a position to do all I can to help them. And that's why I ran.
Very good. Well, yeah, certainly a lot of opportunities for service right now. And can you share some of the highlights of the biggest needs that you've seen with constituents, and the biggest opportunities for service that you've seen too?
The biggest need, I think, is just proper information. People are getting so much information thrown at them from different media outlets, gossip, social media, and none of us really know as much as we need to know about this virus. What we know today could change tomorrow. Things are always fluid. And so I think my role as a city council member is to really try to get the most up-to-date and accurate information to get back to the constituents so that they can make the most and best informed decisions for themselves and their family.
Right, and that's so true with information. And certainly, if it was difficult before, it's doubly difficult now as these swarming conversations of reopening. And so I am curious how you feel we can reopen and start to move in a direction of recovery when, as you mentioned, we still don't know a lot about this virus, and that creates a lot of anxiety.
Definitely. And we were going to have to reopen eventually. The economy is not going to be able to sustain itself too much longer going the route we're going. And so this next period of reopening, that transition, is really going to tell us, I think, more than we even know now about this virus. And once people get out and about and around each other and get back to their daily routines, how are our lives going to be impacted? And so this next wave, I think, is going to be the most critical. We're either going to figure out that we are able to live amongst each other with the information that we currently have, and that we flatten the curve and that things are coming back to normal, or we're going to see that once we get back around each other and things start to open back up, that there's a spike in cases. And what do we do then? And so my biggest thing is, as a city council member and as a municipality, how can we gather all the information that we have learned over the past several weeks to make sure that whatever happens next, we're best prepared.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's right on. So as you know, transportation advocacy group, right? So we focus a lot on infrastructure investment, and I've been thinking about transportation during all of this and its impact and its importance and its significance. And so I am going to ask you if you hear the word transportation today as we walk through something like this, what has that meant for you and for your constituents, and as far as an access kind of conversation?
So transportation is the means to resources. I mean, when it comes to providing food, providing PPE, to get from home to employment, home to grocery store, when it comes to making sure that goods go to the proper place, when it goes to medical equipment being at the proper place, you can't really do any of that without some mode of transportation, whether it's public or your own car. And so even when you think about the access ways, and our highways and our byways and our roads, even outside my office window right now, it's a lot of construction going on, which I think is one of the unintended consequences that's a benefit from this virus is there's less cars on the road so you can get more construction projects done. But for our economy and our society to function properly, you need adequate transportation. So it's critically important.
Right. So thank you for that, because one of our top messages right now with TAG has been thanking our frontline workers that are still out there, moving things along and moving those types of construction and transportation projects along, because it is the network where we are able to move goods, supplies, and access to things like the med center, like you said, grocery stores. All of that is really kind of sitting on top of the infrastructure investments that we've already made. And one of the other things is we look towards, I know the city is having the budget conversations, and the July 1 starts that new fiscal year for the city, and kind of looking at what are those opportunities to invest in job stimulators, right? So how do we look at what we infuse, what we prioritize our money for? And so that's another part of the conversation that we're looking at really at the local, state, and federal levels, as opportunities to be able to create jobs quickly. And as you mentioned, it's the infrastructure piece that is really continuing to power us through. And so as we kind of talk about the budget, how are you, from your vantage point, in your view, how do you see those conversations moving forward amidst everything that's going on?
So this is going to be a very tight budget. In my first budget process, and you always hear when it comes to government that government is strapped for cash. No matter how many tax dollars we pay, government always says that we don't really have a lot of money. Well, when it comes to this particular budget, it's definitely going to be true, due to the fact that we're going to have really low sales tax numbers, and the impact that this virus may have on real estate and property values, and those who are even able to pay their property taxes. That's going to be tough. And so our biggest thing, I know my biggest thing as a council member, is how do we sustain our economy by trying to keep people employed more so than anything else. That's the biggest thing, because if we can keep people employed, then we can kind of get through these rough times and these rough waters. But the more people who either get furloughed, or the more people who get laid off, it's going to be a trickle down effect on our economy.
Right.
So we're trying to think of as many ways as we can to slice and dice the budget so that people can keep their jobs. That's first and foremost.
Right. I think too, some of the jobs that have been lost, right, outside of kind of the government sector, are not jobs that are necessarily coming back relatively soon. And so I'm sure there are also conversations about kind of training and skills and work, retraining kind of a workforce for new opportunities, perhaps in the infrastructure industry. because those will be the more available opportunities. And so conversations that I've had with other officials have talked about that. One of the other things that we've talked about is what this pandemic has exposed. Things that we might know that we had challenges with before, but what has it exposed as a, as a city, as a state, of things that we now need to look at and prioritize. And so I didn't know if you had comments on what you have seen and what's been exposed during the pandemic that we really need to now focus on.
Yeah, I think what we can really start to focus on is what we're doing now. How can we be more efficient with our time and our resources as it pertains to telecommunication, right? I think that's going to go a long ways towards medicine in the medical field, when you may not have to be at a doctor's office or travel to a doctor's office to get medical advice from your doctor. Even when you look at, when it comes to transportation, Houston, we have so much traffic. No matter what study you ask a person about, they're always going to put traffic towards the top of their things that they want to see improved.
Right.
And when you do more teleconferences and telecommunicating, that means you don't have to travel to do this at someone's headquarters or at an event space. You can do it over the computer from wherever you are, and that's less cars on the road, which then is better on the environment. So it could be a trickle down effect as well. And so I think what we have learned is we can find ways to be just as effective and maybe even more efficient sometimes by doing more telecommunicating.
Right, and that is actually something that we at TAG have talked about too. I know HGAC has pushed the commute solutions and other telecommuting kind of policies for businesses in the past, and I think this is an opportunity where we've actually seen, not in the way that we would have wanted, but a very drastic illustration of just how much it can reduce congestion, and really how productivity hasn't suffered tremendously for a lot of businesses.
Yeah.
And I think, as we start to reopen, I think as we start to actually walk the walk of reopening, I do think that people are going to find that it's not really quite what they left behind before.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have a new normal, whatever that looks like. And I think every industry is going to have to look itself in the mirror and say, okay, what did we learn from this? How can we be more efficient, more cost effective? Even here at the city, many of the 311 operators, I've been told, are working remotely. And so putting systems in place to where they can answer those calls and field those calls from a remote location, maybe their homes. And that's actually been effective for us. And we've been shown studies that the call times are better now than they were before, for whatever reason. And so each industry, I think this gives them a chance to kind of look over their space and say, okay, how can we learn from what we had to endure through this crisis, and see if we can transform some of those or transfer some of those variables over to what we're doing now to be more effective.
Right. And I think too, one of the other things that we've seen, the data is yet to come for a lot of things, right? So whether it's economy indicators and numbers that are still going to be rolling in for many months to come, but also some of this other data that you're talking about, where we've had an opportunity to actually see how things can operate that we never even would think about. So as we talk about some of the things and some of the data that's still coming in, and some of the observations that we're making for more efficiency and new opportunities to run things a little differently, one of the things we're also noticing is how we're utilizing our other modes of transportation. So whether it's our bikeways and our trails, there has become this kind of renewed sense of appreciation. And so I was curious about your thoughts and whether or not you think that might shape some, policies moving forward and funding moving forward at the city level.
It could, especially when it comes to some of our hike and bike trails. When parks and trails and public places like that are the only thing that is open right now. You know, you can't go inside a restaurant, you can't go to a movie theater or a ball game. Really one of the only ways you can get out and enjoy time with your family is to get out on these trails. And I think for me personally, my family, we actually Google a lot of different trails and bikeways that we didn't even know anything about that are near to our area, just to find something new to do as a family. And we have so many amazing hike and bike trails all over the city. And I think that going forward, people will have a greater appreciation for those and put a little more emphasis towards having more bikeways and more trails for people to enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of going back to things that we're doing and that we're finding that are new and different, in addition to finding different ways of getting around and appreciating kind of some of our more natural amenities in the city, can you share some perhaps charitable opportunities that you have found or discovered, or organizations that have really, you know, shown up for this pandemic and really been responsive to the needs of your constituents and kind of services?
Yeah, so you know, we have that saying Houston strong, and we've come through Ike, we've come through Hurricane Harvey, and so many other storms where our resiliency as a city has really shown, and we band together and we come together to help each other. And it's been no different through the COVID-19 crisis. Many of the chambers of commerce have helped out and come together for PPE. To provide our office with masks and gloves and food distributions. So the chambers of commerce have been amazing. A lot of the special purpose districts, like the management districts, have been amazing. And then you have private companies. There was a company we partnered with called GoPuff, which is a delivery service, kind of like Uber Eats. Instead of the delivery coming from a specific restaurant, they provide deliveries from like CVS, Walgreens, type of things like that. And we were able to partner with them to deliver groceries to elderly veterans. And then you just have the everyday restaurant who they're struggling themselves, but they're still willing to provide food to those in need. So everyone's kind of coming together in their own special way, whether it's a local alteration shop who's helped us put together masks. People are stepping up all over the place. And so for everyone that's out there doing all that you can, I say thank you.
Yes, well, we appreciate that. And we actually, we've been donating a meal for every thank you video that's been submitted. We've started launched a campaign. So thank you for that. We will donate another meal. And actually, Kids Meals Inc. Is the local organization that we've partnered with for that. So that was perfect. Thank you. I also wanted to say, you know, what is it that you would ask of us, kind of talking about industry and kind of the advocates in the business community? What is it that your ask is of us during all of this and kind of as we move towards recovery?
So my ask is just to be as considerate and compassionate to the needs of others, especially employees and their families. Be mindful of, you know, what people have to go through in their private life, you know, and how that can affect business and how that can sometimes affect the bottom line. And I know I'm a small business owner myself, and sometimes I get so tunnel vision into profits and my own business success, but it's really the people that matter the most. And as an industry across the board, we need to be mindful of those who are going through a tough time and doing all we can to support them. And so that when we do reopen, they understand that we are supportive for them and they'll be even better employees for us going forward.
I appreciate that. I think that is part of what is so uncertain for many people as these conversations about reopening. What does it really look like, and how our business is going to truly handle that for their employees? So that's very, very important. You know, also I would add, you know, if you can kind of look forward right now, you know, the governor has said 25% capacity a couple weeks, maybe 50% capacity. Is it your sense that we're probably going to hold for a bit at a certain capacity for a while, and really try to be very gradual? Is that kind of the intent of the city? It appears that that is more locally what's happening. It's a much more gradual reopening.
Yeah, I think it's going to be gradual. It's going to be based on, I think, individual human behavior and what people are comfortable doing. And
Right.
we don't know that as of yet. I think people are going to start being very cautious. The social distancing, wearing your mask, the proper hygiene. I think people will still have a heightened awareness of all of that. And it's going to take some time for people to get comfortable around each other again. And then being in places to where you feel comfortable with their own policy and procedures when it comes to your health and your interests. And so going into retail stores or going back into restaurants, I think people are going to be very conscious of, the parameters those specific businesses have put in place to keep them safe. And that's something that we're going to have to figure out over the next several weeks, what the human behavior is like. But I do think people are going to be very cautious initially, because there's no need to rush things. Just because something opens up doesn't necessarily mean you need to go in.
Right.
So I think people are going to take their time. But the good thing is we are starting to transition to opening up, so that people can get back to some sense of normalcy. But people are going to have to also use their best judgment in doing what they believe is best for them and their families.
Right. No, absolutely. So I always ask at the end of these interviews if you have learned anything that surprised you about yourself, your family, colleagues, because I think it's been an opportunity for us all to learn
Yeah, I
something.
mean, I've learned a lot. One of the things that I notice is I'm out and about all the time. My daily routine really hasn't changed much. I'm always working on behalf of my district and the city, and so we're constantly together trying to figure out ways in which we can aid our citizens. And so being out and about while there's no traffic and no one else around is extremely odd. And
Mhm.
when you're used to being in traffic, and we complain about traffic all the time, and to be on the highways and streets and you're just zipping around with no one else around, that's odd. And so what shocked me is I miss traffic. I really do. I I miss traffic because I didn't appreciate the fact that the reason we have so much traffic is because people are being productive, people are employed, people are going places that bring them happiness, people are moving around and enjoying life, making memories, having experiences. And when you don't see that happening, you have to think that people are missing out. People are missing out on life. They're missing out on having fun with their friends and family. And so you start to appreciate sitting in traffic because you know what that means. You know that is people having the opportunity to do something.
Right.
And without that, it's kind of made me sad at times riding around because the city feels a little lifeless.
Right.
It doesn't feel alive. It doesn't, people aren't all over you. And we can sometimes take those things for granted and complain about the traffic. But um, when you pull up to a parking garage and you can pick any space you want, you would think that was great at one point in time, but you have to think the reason that this is because people aren't working. People don't feel safe. And
Right.
so we need to be appreciative when that time comes back around and understand that, yeah, I'm sitting in traffic, but I'm sitting in traffic because all these people have jobs to go to.
Right. No, I appreciate that. Thank you for that message, and for all of your time today and your service and your leadership, even through uh, our current challenges that we're facing. So really appreciate it. We look forward to future conversations with
Yes.
you, as we navigate all together through this. And thank you again for your time today.
Well, thank you for having me. I truly appreciate all you all support. keep my family in your prayers. I'll do the same for you. I look forward to getting back to some sense of normalcy and us working together to make our city the best it can be.
Thank you so much, Councilmember.
Take care.
That was Homeside Chats. Hope you enjoyed this episode. This series would not be possible without the partnership of our 2020 Mobility Partners. We thank you for your membership and your support. Stay tuned for more episodes of Homeside Chats.